Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Today, we are going to be talking about sweet tooth. That's right. The cravings that everyone deals with. Well, not everyone. Dr. Saunders, I don't think you have a sweet tooth anymore, do you?
I will tell you my story.
Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Well, good.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We have people hopping on from all over the place here. Good to see some new people and some regulars that have joined us in the past. So today is going to be a great call. Uh, our webinars are, we call it the diabetes reversal webinar. So each topic typically has something to do with managing or reversing type 2 diabetes. And so looks like we've got, a good number of people on today. And so let's get right to it here. Okay, so before we get into our topic of the sweet tooth, just a reminder that this is being made available for informational purposes and educational purposes only, not intended to be a substitute for your own professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've read or seen here. All right. Well, good morning, Dr. Saunders. Good to have you with us as always. Love to get into different conversations. And today we're going to talk about the sweet tooth and cravings. So sounds like this is a timely topic as well as you're preparing for the Home Cures That Work article of the same topic.
Right, exactly.
Excellent. All right. So thanks for joining us, everyone. It looks like, I'm not sure if we're on Facebook or not today, but if we are, hello, Facebook, and hello, YouTube. We post all these webinars to our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and just search for Barton Publishing TV or Barton Publishing Webinars, you'll find us there. You can subscribe and you can watch previous recordings that we've had and covered a lot of different topics. Last week, we talked about supplements. We've talked about medications and metformin. We've talked about a lot of different good topics. So, all right. As always, if you're watching us, you are welcome to ask us your questions. You'll find a little chat box on the bottom. Also, there's a Q&A box that you can use, and you can type your questions right in there. I will be monitoring those and asking Dr. Saunders as we go along here. So, okay, Dr. Saunders, let's get into it. What is a sweet tooth?
Well, a sweet tooth is when people like sweet things. Most people do. It's a very common thing. Sweet is something that the taste buds tell us is good. And it makes sense if you think about it. Why would we have a sweet tooth? Well, it's because things that are sweet contain sugar, and sugar is needed for energy. So if you have fruit on the tree that isn't tasty, then people aren't going to want to eat it, even if it has a lot of nutrition and a lot of energy or whatever else that the body needs in it. So it's a perfectly logical thing for us to crave and need and want and desire sweet things, because that particular nutrient is a quick source of energy, and it's a great source of energy. Sugar.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I suppose less people would be inclined to eat food if it tasted horrible. So, all right. So why? Yeah, I guess this is an interesting question. Like I think about, I go back to the Garden of Eden and fruits on the trees, and like, all right, like if why why is sugar so tasty? Why does it taste so good, and yet oftentimes it's so bad for us?
Well, it's not that it is bad intrinsically. It is good intrinsically. Everything God made is good, but what we have is an oversupply. So when you oversupply anything, it becomes toxic. And if you say, Well, I'm going to drink several gallons of water a day. What'll happen is you'll get water intoxication. And I actually had a patient who got water intoxication. She almost died. We sent her to the ER, and they said, it was a lucky thing for her that she showed up in the ER when she did, because she was already getting brain dysfunction from water intoxication. She just drank too much water. Anything that you get too much of becomes a problem. So sugar by itself is actually really good and really useful and really helpful. The body needs it. It's great. It's energy. But what's happened is, because we like it so much, we get more, and more is better, right? So more and more and more and more. And that's where it becomes a problem, is the craving of it's not just, I'll have a couple of pieces of fruit a day because they're sweet and I like sweet. It is every meal. People, many of my patients, when they come in, I have them do a meal plan, or 2 weeks. They write down everything they eat. And if you look at their list, there is nothing that they eat that doesn't have sugar in it. They even, like, if they have milk, they put some chocolate in it, or strawberry flavors. If they have, they don't drink water, they always have juice or Kool-Aid or something sweet in the juice. And then everything they eat, even their meat, has to have some sugary spices on it, like ketchup or barbecue sauce. Barbecue sauce is like pure sugar. It's like syrup. And so I look at these diets and I go, oh my gosh, do you ever eat anything that isn't sweet? And they're like, no.
Yeah.
I never eat anything that isn't sweet.
Right. Yeah, it's everywhere. When we did the diabetes reversal talk a few years ago, we had a visual aid up on stage, and it was, I think, 160 pounds of sugar, or 180 pounds of sugar is the average amount that the average American eats or consumes each year, which is like half a pound a day of just pure sugar. So it's everywhere.
Yep. And that's where it becomes a problem. That's where it becomes toxic. It's, people always ate sugar, and people always loved sugar, and people always loved fruit. It's kind of interesting if you go back throughout history. The things that we have, the problems, the diseases that we suffer from, our society generally, things like obesity and diabetes and heart disease and cancer, those were diseases of kings in the past. Only the kings could afford to live on always having a wine or grape juice, and always drinking their beverages always had sweetness to them, or sugar or carbs in them, and so the king's meat, so to speak, the tasty kind of stuff, are what caused the kings to have those kinds of illnesses that like we are all eating like kings did in days of yore. And so we get the diseases that used to be only the aristocracy could afford to have.
Right. Well, wasn't gout considered like a king's disease or something? Because
yeah, exactly.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So poor people didn't typically get gout.
No, nor diabetes. Diabetes was practically unknown. Only 100 years ago, it was rare.
Well, that reminds me, like in the book of Daniel, Daniel was a Jew that was brought into, I think, Babylon, and they offered him to be one of the leaders of the country, and he's like, well, sure, but I'm not going to eat the king's food. Just give me vegetables. And they're like, what are you, crazy? Like, this is the best stuff around. And he's like, nope, just let us eat vegetables for 10 days, and then we'll see who looks better and feels better and has more energy. And sure enough, just eating those vegetables and not eating all the king's luxurious food made a huge difference. I don't know if they changed their kingdom around that or not, but
they didn't. They never do.
But there was, like Rick Warren did that Daniel fast with Dr. Daniel Amen and who was it? Dr. Oz, I think, was a part of that. And that was a pretty big movement about, I don't know, 9 years ago, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. That. But see, even then they use a lot of beans, pulse and beans and whole grains and barley and stuff like that. And even then, Americans don't want to eat it just the way it is. They have to spice it up with putting a whole bunch of sugar in it and make it into baked beans. There's
Oh,
the,
yeah.
the baked beans that you get are just like, they have a lot of sugar in them. It's, cups and cups of sugar. It's not just like a little taste.
Right. Yeah. It's sometimes easy to overlook the sugar because you think, well, even like eating a salad, you could dump salad dressing with tons of sugar on it, and all of a sudden your salad goes from low carb to high carb and not good for you.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of salad dressings contain sugar. And it's pretty rare to find one that doesn't have sugar in it.
Yeah.
And when
So
you go to a restaurant, everything in a restaurant, there's only 4 ingredients that restaurants have to have to stay in business: sugar, salt, fat, and MSG. And if they don't have those 4 in whatever food they're making, then people won't go back.
Yeah, it isn't MSG, and this is a whole nother topic, but doesn't MSG make you want to eat more of whatever it is you're eating, basically?
Oh yeah. It's the umami flavor. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, if you're watching us live, I'd love for you to put in the chat box, tell us a couple of your sweet tooth foods that are maybe what you might consider a weakness. For me, it's chocolate chip cookies. I also brought some visual aids behind me. I've got cereal boxes. I'd like to say I got these from the neighbor, but actually they've been in our cabinet cupboard for quite a while.
So they're just cereal boxes. You already ate all the cereal?
Well, there is still some cereal in there. I need to let my dog out quick. Yeah. So tell us in the chat, like type in the chat, like what are some of the weakness of food weaknesses you have?
It's interesting that you have cereal on there, because cereal is the downfall of many people. It's so good, everybody loves it. It's sweet, it's easy, it's tasty, it's cold and wet, and just I love cereal personally. And
yeah, so this is interesting.
I'll tell you my story. I have a sweet tooth like you wouldn't believe. I was just telling Leslie before we started about I would go to grandma's house. My mom didn't allow sugar in our house. We didn't have ice cream in the freezer. We didn't have cereal, cold cereal, at least that had any sugar in it. She wouldn't have chocolate. She'd like carob bars, and she was really into Adele Davis health stuff back in the 70s. And so I would go to grandma's house, and grandma had Apple Jacks, and I was like, oh my gosh, grandma's house is awesome. She has Apple Jacks. And so but I rarely got to go there and have any. But when I grew up, I was walking through the store one time, and I was in college, and I was going, dude, I could totally buy my own Apple Jacks. And so I bought some. It's like, whoa. And then I took them home, and the next morning I ate them, and they weren't any good. I don't even like them anymore. When I was a kid, I had a taste for it, but now my tastes are different. Or back then, that was 30 years ago.
So here's a good example. This is frosted mini wheats, and these taste pretty good, I gotta admit. Put these in a bowl of milk, let them soak up a little bit, and then slurp it up. But I looked at the carbs on this, and let's see here. 51 grams of carbohydrates in 1 cup of, which is like 25 small little biscuits in here. That's like that's like 2.5 days worth of carbs on the phase 1 of the diabetes reversal plan. You could eat like 6 biscuits of this and maybe, nothing else for the day and be okay. But like, they just packed so much sugar in this. Lucky Charms actually wasn't quite as bad. This one was 22 grams of carbs, 10 grams of sugar. That's only 3/4 cup though. So if you can only eat 3/4 of a cup of cereal, that's your whole daily allowance. But Yeah, there's so much sugar in this. And you look at cookies. So some other people mention here M&Ms. That's a big one for me as well. I used to just grab a handful of peanut M&Ms, and yeah, that did not help my blood
Yeah,
sugar.
for me it was Skittles. I had Skittles in my car, and so while I was driving to work and back, I would just pop in Skittles. And then so I decided one time, I said, you know what, this probably isn't really good for me. So then, but you know, I had to have something, so I put raisins in my car. You know, still having that sweet tooth, I would eat the
Yeah,
raisins. And there's still a lot of sugar in those. You know, if you're popping raisins all the time, it's not
true.
that the Skittles are any worse, particularly if you're having a constant supply of sugar. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter whether it comes from a fruit, even though there are some nutrients in the fruit. That's a good thing, but
Yeah,
still, the
right.
sugar's there.
Yeah. I've had a few people say that sweets aren't so bad, but flavoring, any type of flavoring is needed. And then also, like, not so much the sweets, but carbs that turn into sugar, like white rice, bread rolls, English muffin, pasta, things like that.
Oh yeah, you know, that's interesting. I was at a nutrition conference last weekend, um, and they're doing things now with flour, like they're super fine grinding the flour so that the fiber in it, the bran and the germ is broken up into little pieces, and then you don't get the benefit of the high fiber part, and it's
Oh,
actually broken up so that it doesn't help like your bowels. You know, you kind of want roughage to be roughage, and so
right.
a lot of these things like the frosted mini wheats that you showed, when they super fine grind it, even though it says whole grain, you're
Yeah,
really not getting all the benefits from whole grain
right.
because of the way they make it super fine. So even then, the having some roughage is really good for you, and chewing it up yourself and or grinding your own wheat. My wife used to make bread grinding her own wheat, and that's
Mhm.
how she did it most of the time.
You know, I was just looking at this. You mentioned the whole grain on the labels. You have to be careful because they'll use, like Kellogg's uses marketing that says made with 100% whole grain or 100% daily value of iron and folate. So, uh, you know, it makes you think like, oh, that's a good thing. So I can eat this, right? No, not so much. And then Lucky Charms, gluten free. So, oh, okay, great. I can eat it. Not so much. So that's where like learning to read the nutrition labels, nutrition facts. You look at the total carbs, and right here, just the cereal is 51 grams. If you have it in milk, which most people do, it's up to 60 grams for one bowl of cereal. And, you know, that shows your sugars. This is in Spanish, so it's a little harder to read, but total sugars, you know, 22 grams just of pure sugar. And then you've got 6 grams of fiber. But yeah, that's so learning to read labels. So let's get to, let's see, next question on my list here for you. All right. So is there any connection between vitamin deficiencies and having sweet cravings?
There may be. There are several deficiencies that don't allow you to use sugar properly, and a very common one is chromium. Many people, if not most people in the United States, because I've tested, and most of the people that I test are deficient in chromium. And chromium allows you to be more efficient at using sugar. So if you don't have enough chromium and you can't use sugar well, then your body's saying, you know, I need more sugar, kind of thing. And so vanadium may be another one. There are other minerals that cause cravings, deficiencies in minerals that cause cravings, especially minerals. I don't know specifically of vitamins that would do that, but I imagine B vitamins, if you're deficient in them, you would begin to crave at least carbohydrates, food. So having deficiencies, then you get cravings, and if you're not filling that specific deficiency, then you just like keep eating and eating and eating, and it doesn't fill the need. So it doesn't fix the problem. So the craving continues.
Yeah. Well, shameless plug for Cinechroma here. This has got selenium and vanadium and chromium in it, as well as cinnamon bark extract, vitamin D3 and K2. So this supplement, can you talk just quickly, like how does this work as far as curbing cravings? And when should you take it?
Okay, so essentially what it does is it allows you to be more efficient at using sugar. So it allows you to keep your energy up with the same amount of insulin. And so it may be this is my own idea what the way I prefer to look at it, because you asked about deficiencies causing cravings, but a bigger issue with cravings is insulin. If your insulin is high, then you're bringing sugar into your cells and making fat into your fat cells and glycogen in your other cells. So insulin actually causes you to have more cravings, and you become resistant to leptin, and that causes you to have more cravings. So what the Cinechroma does is allows you to be more efficient at burning the sugar, so you can need a lower insulin level so you don't get as much craving. So that's the way I would look at it. Not and partially because you're getting chromium now that you weren't getting before, so you can be more efficient.
So let's talk a little bit about fasting and how that affects your sweet tooth cravings, because I notice, like, if I have a weekend where I eat too many carbs, typically on Monday I'll just go 0 carbs and kind of reset, and we talk also about the 6-10 reset plan of going to bed by 10 o'clock at night on an empty stomach, how that helps as well. So I've found that to be very helpful myself. But like, what does fasting do? I think you mentioned leptin, and maybe it was ghrelin I was thinking about, but that helps with that.
Okay, so ghrelin makes you hungry,
Okay.
and leptin is released from the fat to make you not hungry. But
Okay.
over time, when you have more fat, you release more leptin, and you become resistant to it the same way you become resistant to any hormone that you have too much of over a long period of time. So what fasting does is brings it all back to normal again. So it makes your leptin go back to normal, your ghrelin go back to normal, your endorphins from your brain that help keep you feeling good, and then the insulin as well. So all of that goes back to normal, so you can diminish the cravings. There was a guy in 1968 in Scotland. I think I told this story before. He weighed about 480 pounds, and he went to his doctor and said, I've tried every diet known to man. I've tried everything and nothing works. I can't lose any weight. I am just going to quit eating until I weigh 180 pounds. And the doctor said, there's no way you could do that. You would die. And the guy goes, I don't care. I would rather be dead. So he did. He went for a year and 18 days with no food at all. He was drinking, he had some tea, black tea, and some water and a vitamin pill. And that's it for over a year. And then, so here's what I wanted to say is, he was at 180 pounds after a year and 18 days. And then, so 5 years later, the Journal of Postgraduate Medicine from the United States went to Scotland and looked him up. And he weighed 180 pounds.
Wow.
When you fast to lose weight, you normalize all of those hormones, all the hunger hormones, all the cravings, your metabolism, your fat burning, sugar burning metabolism, everything gets normal again while you're fasting. That fixes everything. So that even 5 years after going back on a regular diet, he didn't gain the weight back. And that's true with most people. People who do the very low calorie diets, they tend to gain it all back. So if people that go to the doctor and they get those liquid diets, meal replacement diets, OptiFast diets, all those kinds of things, they tend to gain it back. So if you go back 5 years, you'll find most of them have gained it back, and often plus more.
Yeah.
Whereas people who fast, because they fix the hormone part of it, the cravings, the insulin, the leptin, the adiponectin, all gets fixed, and becomes normal. So the cravings go away, so you can maintain weight loss much more easily after fasting.
So I want to get into a few different questions here from our guests, and one of them actually does ask about a liquid diet. So she said, this past week I spent 3 days in the hospital with a partial bowel blockage and am now on a soft liquid diet. How can I stay on the diabetic diet, I would assume low carb, with these restrictions, since many soft foods seem to be higher carbs?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So, they're like saying, well, you got to live on mashed potatoes and yogurt and
Applesauce, yeah.
cottage cheese and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, cottage cheese doesn't have, I don't know if that's allowed on her specific diet. But mostly if there's a bowel obstruction, you want a really high fiber diet. So beans are great. So if you have hummus and refried beans, that's really soft. And it's a good kind of fiber that'll keep your bowels moving really well. You can't eat so much like raw vegetables, but you can have cooked vegetables. So if you take, what do they call that? The cauliflower rice. We get that from Trader Joe's. And cauliflower rice is something that you can eat that's high in fiber again, but is soft and easy to digest. And so if you cook your vegetables a little longer, then they're softer, and so that they'll go down. And there's one thing that I've done for people who've had bowel obstruction or diverticulosis that has worked really well in my experience, and that is the green smoothie. So like anything green, so the things that they tell you, don't eat salads and stuff, but if you take greens and you make a smoothie out of it, and so the green's okay, but you got to put something that has flavor in it. You can't just eat plain greens and water. So what you do is you put a raw pineapple in there, and the raw pineapple, yes, it has sugar in it, but it'll have digestive enzymes that help break down the proteins, and then also more fiber. So a green smoothie with raw pineapple is a really good way to clean out the bowels and keep them moving well. I've had that work really well.
And one tip with the pineapple, almost all the sugar goes to the bottom of the pineapple. So if you wanted to eat the top 80% of the pineapple, you'd get a lot less sugar.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, the bottom 20% is, for whatever reason, I think just the way it sits,
What sugar is heavier and it just goes down?
I don't know. Well, that's good. I was gonna say too, like bone broth would probably be good. Just it's got a lot of nutrients, so if you're on a liquid diet, that would be helpful, I would imagine.
That's true too. Yeah, bone broth is great, and you can avoid carbs that way.
Yeah. Okay, so Skip has a question. Hey, Skip, good to see you again. All right, why does it take 4 days to get back to ketosis after eating sugar?
Good question. Okay, that's an individual thing.
Yeah.
Some people switch from sugar burning to fat burning so quickly and have no problems. But some people store a lot of glycogen. And so you eat a little bit of sugar and you burn a little bit of sugar, but then your body sucks it up, and your liver, especially your liver, just sucks up that sugar and makes a whole bunch of glycogen. So then you're burning glycogen, and then you're burning protein, and so it takes a long time, days, to get back to burning fat. So on the average, it takes about 3 days to switch your metabolism from sugar burning to fat burning. And some people do it really quickly, like overnight. But other people, it takes several days. And people who are still eating, I've had somebody who had diabetes take 9 days on a keto type diet, 9 days before he was actually making ketones in his urine. We were testing the urine. So it depends on the individual, but there are reasons for that, and it's for two reasons. One is the storage of glycogen, and two is the burning proteins using protein, which is made into sugar. That's why you don't get ketones from that.
So is there anything else you can do to speed up that process, like physical exercise or jumping on a trampoline or going for a walk or a run or anything like that, jumping jacks? Is that going to help activate, get some of the glycogen out and, I don't know, use it up faster? Or is that not real impactful?
I imagine it would, but I don't know of any specific research. I know it's kind of interesting. The only research I can think of where exercise was used as to induce ketosis was when Nike was trying to get the under 2 hour marathon. They realized that they couldn't use carbs because you can't get 26.2 miles. You can't store enough carbs to run a full marathon, but you can easily store enough fat. It only takes 1 pound of fat to run a whole marathon. So they tried to induce ketosis in their runners, and it took them a couple of weeks, even though they were still running. They were still like long distance running. So I don't know that there's any. I'm sure there's research on it. I just haven't looked it up.
Yeah. All right. I got to share this from Patrick. This made me laugh. So this is when we were sharing, like, what's our weaknesses. He says, white chocolate macadamia nut cookies. I would tell people to always buy 2 cookies at the mall. 1 cookie won't get you to the car in the parking lot, and you'd have to walk all the way back in to buy more. So 2 cookies. 2 cookies will get you out of the parking lot, so you don't have to go back inside. Yes. Thanks, Patrick. That was good.
Well, that brings up something really important, and that is knowing what your limits are and knowing where, what kinds of things are going to mess up your diet and start cravings. Because that was one of the things we wanted to talk about. What makes us have more cravings? Well, the more sugar you eat, the more you crave. And the less sugar you eat, the less you crave. So putting off cravings is a really good idea. So that Patrick had a great idea, and that is I'm not going to eat a whole package of cookies. I'm just going to get 2, and that gets me out of the mall. And then I'm going to be too lazy to drive all the way back and go back in. So I'm done. And you know, there has to be the way to deal with cravings is to have limits, to say, what can I do? So, you know, you asked me as we were starting about my own, like, I don't have any issues with sugar, right? Wrong, totally wrong. I was the kid, when I was a little kid, I was scraping candy, half-eaten candy that was melted into the sidewalk to eat it. Serious. Like, if I saw sugar, I would eat it. Yeah, my mom didn't allow it in the house, but when I was out, when I was at church and they were offering it, I was getting as many as I could, as much as I could. And so I was, you know, I was that kid that was just completely carb addicted, sweet tooth. I would eat any sugar anywhere I could find it. Yeah. So as I got older and I realized that wasn't really, it didn't make me feel good. It didn't really help me to be healthy, and I wanted to be healthy. So what I decided, I would put limits, but you can't just say no sugar, which I have done. In fact, one time I told my kids, a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, I told them, if you will go for a whole year without sugar, I'll give you $100 bill. I showed him $100 bill. I'll give you one of these if you go for a whole year without eating any sugar. So they had some rules, and that is they could have honey, and they could have natural sugars, of course, like fruit. And so if there was, like, you know, instead of jam, they could have that all fruit spread, and, you know, stuff like that. And then the only thing that they could have that had processed sugar was their grandmother's pomegranate jelly that she made every year. So so there were specific rules and they did. Two little kids, they went through Halloween and Thanksgiving and Christmas and had nothing with sugar in, as far as I know. I don't know, maybe they but so having a time limit, for example, of saying, I'm going to go, I did it with them for the year, for the whole year. But even then I messed up a few times and I ate some frosted mini wheats and I don't remember what else. Hey, you have some there.
Eat those. That's
There
so
you go.
horrible. I can't imagine why anyone would have those in their house.
I know, right? So setting your own limits, like for me, cookies. So for Patrick, it's the macadamia nut white chocolate. For me, it's oatmeal raisin. I can have oatmeal raisin cookies. So if there's homemade oatmeal raisin cookies, that's on my list. That's okay. But any other kind of cookies, chocolate chip or whatever, those aren't on my list.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as I have things that I can eat, that's okay. Then I can go with that. So that's how it works for me.
Yep, that's good. Yeah, the more difficult you make it to eat those foods, like Patrick said, you have to actually go into the mall, and that's just a lot harder. Which is why you want to like clear out your pantry of all the bad stuff or most of the bad stuff, so it's not so easy that if you do get a craving, you just reach over and grab a handful of candy or whatever it is. So
exactly. So we always had in our refrigerator at home, we had fruit and carrots, those like baby carrots peeled and everything. So there's really simple to get to. And so when the kids say, there's nothing to eat, and we tell them that you can have a fruit or a vegetable anytime you want, and you don't have to ask. and we always had them around so that if they had to eat something, that they could eat that, and that would be okay.
Yeah. Got another good question here from Jan. So she says, I'm still on the first phase of the diabetes reversal plan diet. And though I have no problem at all with the lunch and evening meal, but as I feared, breakfast is the real hurdle. I always wake up feeling extremely hollow, and eating breakfast takes priority over getting dressed. I really crave my previous standard breakfast of toast and marmalade. It's the orange peel in the marmalade that really makes it attractive to me. Anything savory, first thing, makes me feel quite nauseous. Still, I persevere, and after nearly 6 weeks, I have only broken out twice. So I guess there wasn't a question in that, but any tips for her in how to get that, maybe that taste, that savory taste of orange peel? I mean, there's teas that, with orange peel tea that you could have. I don't know if that would help. And
yeah, the first thing I would say is good job, Jan. Good work.
Right.
Only 2 times. We all mess up all the time. Like I said, I challenged my kids to go a whole year without eating sugar, and I couldn't do it.
Right. Yeah.
So the way to handle that is to find a substitute of some kind. So savory things, salty kinds of things. So if she isn't going to have, I don't know, an omelet or vegetables or anything like that, breaking out and looking for other ways to do that. Like the tea, for example, that's a great idea. You get that orange peel tea.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll have some of that orange flavor. For me, it was always grains. I had to have bread, cereal, something like that. And so for me to break that, a handful of raw almonds worked really well for me. And so I would eat a handful of raw almonds instead to avoid the grains. It still has carbs in it, but not nearly as much as if I had a bowl of cereal or anything. So finding a substitute that works for you, that isn't going to raise your blood sugar or increase your sugar.
Yeah, for me, like having a morning coffee, or I use like an organic cacao blend with some turmeric and some other things in it called Cacao Bliss, which we have promoted to our subscribers on our email list in the past. And but like, can you talk a little bit about fat and protein in the morning, especially like, and how that helps? Because I know fat, like you mentioned earlier, it helps to curb hunger cravings and other cravings. So, yeah. You talk about
Yeah,
that.
that's a really good idea. I was at a nutrition conference at UCLA this last weekend, and uh, the protein is actually important for maintaining body mass, maintaining muscle strength, and keeping going all day long. So having some kind of protein in the morning is a really good idea. And then and then fat helps you to to feel satiated, to say, oh, I've had enough. So you don't really have to have carbohydrates. So protein and fat are often really good. People will eat eggs or if you've ever heard of bulletproof coffee where they're putting coconut oil and butter, like we said when we were at our little conference in Utah, the
Kerrygold.
Kerrygold. Yeah, it's got to be Kerrygold butter. It's the only kind you can put in there. Grass-fed butter.
Yep.
So having the fat. For me, I've totally changed the way I eat breakfast. I will have sautéed vegetables. I had let's see, Brussels sprouts, and when I make Brussels sprouts, I put coconut oil on them, and I put them in the oven and bake them. Or yeah. Uh, anyway, the types of things, we kind of get in a habit of eating certain things for breakfast, but Jan could have all kinds of carbohydrate-rich things like Brussels sprouts and broccoli and carrots
Yeah.
for breakfast that just might work well for her.
Yeah. Well, Pam, thanks for contributing this, but she asked if she's ever tried orange essential oil, and that's a great idea. You could add a drop or two of that to like a green smoothie, and you'd get that taste of the orange peel, and it's got a lot of benefits to it as well. So that might be something to try. Thanks, Pam. And I think I've got one more. Let's see. Okay, another question here from Patrick. I just reheated some of last night's pork and veggie stir fry. I like to add the miracle noodles, shirataki noodles, to provide bulk and make it like high carb, calorie noodle stir fry. Do you have any opinions about these? Supposedly, they're 0 calorie, 0 carb noodles.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have. I don't know. I've never used them before, and I don't know what they. I know I've read about them, and they're made out of a carbohydrate that's non-digestible, and protein, and so yeah, no carbs, no calories, because it's really fiber. But I don't know of any long-term or any effects that it might have. I don't know. It could be good. It could actually be good for your intestines. Your intestines, the bacteria in your intestines grow based on the fiber, and if that's something that's going to grow good bacteria, that would be really good too.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of, like, you've talked about stevia in the past, or sugar alcohols like erythritol or xylitol. Like sometimes those sugar alcohols, like they're not absorbed, I believe, is kind of why they don't necessarily count as carbs. But I think they also can mess up your digestive system and your gut bacteria a bit too. So you kind of have to look at that, and also look at the insulin effect as well. So yeah, I don't know how you would measure that or test for that, but there's probably some research out there about that.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, let's have one last question here. So from Timothy, he asks, "Is hot cereal good for breakfast?"
Oh, that's a great question. The answer is maybe. So if you're on the phase 1 of the diabetes reversal, then hot cereal is something that's going to be pretty high in carbs. And really, a lot of the issues come in of the processing of the cereals. So if you take oatmeal, for example, and you get just plain old rolled oats, and you heat them up, it's kind of a not as smooth, not as mushy kind of cereal. It's kind of a little more chewy, which is actually good. It has more fiber in it. It's in many ways better, and it's not as rapidly absorbed a carbohydrate. Whereas if you take the instant hot cereals like the oatmeal in the packets that are sugar sweetened and all of that, but even if you didn't have the sweetener, those instant oatmeals are pre-processed to where the starch in them is very quickly absorbed as sugar, and so it'll raise your blood sugar faster and more than the oatmeal that is the old-fashioned or just rolled oats. So it does make a difference, and you say, well, that what's the it's not a big deal, but at one meal, no, it's not. But over time, then people that eat instant oatmeal will have more insulin resistance than people who eat the plain rolled oats. The other kinds of cereals, like the cream of wheat kinds of things, those hot cereals are again processed, so they're rapidly absorbed carbohydrates. And then there are like granola types of kashi kinds of hot cereals that are grains. They're whole grains. They're not processed, and those are probably okay too. But remember that anything you're doing there, you just add up the carbohydrates if you're doing the diabetes reversal plan. And then if not, or if you have diabetes, just be careful with them and check your blood sugar and see if that gives you a significant increase in blood sugar.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one more question came in that's really important here. Alan said that he's having problems staying within the 20 carb limit. It appears that protein is all that you can eat. Even green vegetables seem to run the carb count up. So real quick, I'll give my 2 cents and then you can add to that. But 20 carbs, like we've talked about whether it's total, like gross carbs or like total carbs or net carbs, like can you reduce the amounts? Like if there's 5 grams of carbs and 3 grams of fiber, is that 2 carbs or is that 5 carbs? And so typically if you're eating veggies, you're getting quite a bit of fiber in that. So then you can kind of ratchet up the 20 carbs can go up to 30 or 40 potentially because of that fiber that you're eating with it, right?
Oh yeah, green vegetables, things like celery is negative, so you can eat as much celery as you want, and there's even though it's pure carbohydrate and water, it doesn't count because it's almost all fiber, and you're not really getting any sugars from that, and there's not much starch, and you're getting little sugar. So and the other greens, leafy greens, anything like spinach and kale, and collard greens and mustard greens, any of those kind of things, I kind of don't even count those. Just look at those as that's free. Any of those that you eat are free. Lettuce, the green leafy greens, and so what kind of green things would have significant carbs in them? Well, cucumbers and bell peppers, those are actually fruit. So the actual vegetables, I would say on phase 1, don't count them. Kind of like what you said. You could look at them. The net carbs is practically 0.
Mm-hmm. There's some things like snap peas or things like that. Those are higher sugar. Yeah, peas.
Yeah. Green beans, snap peas, they're going to have a little more. Right, exactly.
But yeah, like he asked about broccoli and cauliflower. Those are 2 great vegetables that are very low net carbs.
Yeah, very low.
Cauliflower is a great substitute for mashed potatoes or rice. Typically, a lot of dishes can be made when you substitute the cauliflower for those things. You can still have your chicken and gravy, and instead of rice, you'd have the cauliflower. So, not a ton of it, but a decent amount of it. So, yeah. Yeah, well, great. Okay, so this has been a great call. I think we're going to wrap up. We try to shoot for about 45 minutes on our calls here. So if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet to our weekly webinar, you can go to bartonwebinar.com, and on there is a link where you can register for notifications of future webinars. We do these every Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock Central Time, and we would love to have you join us each week. And as you can see, Dr. Saunders is just great at answering questions and helping people keep on track, stay motivated, get some practical tips. And so we encourage all of you to stay on the plan, keep going, and great job. Thanks for sharing what you guys are finding success with, and even your struggles. This is a human endeavor, a human journey that we're on, and we're in this together with you. So from everyone at Barton Publishing, we thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next time. So Scott, thank you as well. And if you want to close us out with a joke, if you got one ready.
Joke. Joke. Okay. Well, this isn't a joke. This is actually true. If life gives you melons, you're dyslexic.
There you go. With that, Leslie's going to close us out after that one. We need the rim shot and the drum. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Scott. We'll see you next time.